one can plan all the modulations or not plan them, but at the end it has to come back. When I was first improvising fugue, I would get very lost in my modulations. And I would forget what key I even started in. Okay? By the way, ladies and gentlemen, questions like this are very surprising for the improviser when you've been playing repertoire your whole life. You don't realize how much you know because you get to repeat the thing off the page. But when you're improvising, what key did I start in? I have to know that. There's nothing, no paper to tell me. So that's a special extra effort. And how does this theme go? What are the intervals of the theme? What will it sound like if I move it to B flat major? What scale degree does it start on? All these questions you never had to ask in playing repertoire, suddenly you have to ask. So early on when I would improvise fugues, I would make a chart of key areas. And I was trying to develop the discipline of visiting the 5 neighboring keys. Okay? 5 neighboring keys are those with the same key signature or one more or less accidental. So you'll get your relative, major or minor, and then the dominant direction and the subdominant direction. And this is typical of the 18th century to visit these closely related keys. I would end up in a tritone away, just in these terrible dark tonalities. And so I would have a sheet, you know, just like visit this, visit this, visit this, go home again. And I would work off that. Now I'm more disciplined and I don't get into these distant keys. And I don't worry if I visit the subdominant twice or if I come back to the tonic in the middle and then leave again. I don't worry. At the end, I will make a strong return to the tonic. And in this case, I did a pedal point, which is optional in fugue, but it's very dramatic. You put the dominant in the bass, and of course on a piano like this, you can also... And then you can do this in a couple of ways. That's cool. Or all of that over. César Franck, you can go a little more chromatic. But see, over that pedal point, a lot of crimes are forgiven. And you can turn up the tension tremendously so that by the time everyone just says, ah, all right, you know. So, drama, yeah. A lot.
A lot.
Yeah. Especially in the exposition, because when you have that first subject, obviously, alone, and then the answer, now it's 2-part counterpoint. I consider 2-part counterpoint to be a special situation because there are no triads. There are no chords. It's only intervals. And so it's a mistake to think in terms of, you know, this is D major, or this is an F chord. It's only intervals, thirds, sixths, sevenths, ninths, fourths. And actually studying fugues is great because you learn to move around and set up and resolve dissonances and then decorate them. So let's just make a little pattern in C major, a third, and if I move to a second, the lower one is dissonant and must resolve. But I'm also allowed, the upper one can jump away, okay? The upper one is done, and it doesn't have to stay there, by the way, okay? I didn't really know this. I thought it had to stay there. But that's lovely. Okay, now from here, I can do a 7/6. So now I can set up all these different dissonances of typically seconds, sevenths, those are the main ones. Fourths are good but not as powerful. Then the discipline involves what we call diminution. And diminution are unimportant connecting notes. So if I have, the law says the lower note must resolve. But the law allows a little extra note, okay? Very powerful. By the way, you know this piece? Or do you know this piece? Do you hear that one note, how beautiful it is? Aren't you glad he didn't write with a saw, you know? Because what he's telling you with that one note is, this is a tune. This is a song, okay, with one note. So I'm allowed to do that. Or, according to Fugues, I don't have to go straight here. I can leap away to a consonant. And, how about... And now let's fill those in. Sounds like music. And I'm sitting here just doing my math. Prepare, resolve, leap away, connect, prepare, resolve, sneak in this way. I'm just doing my counterpoint exercises. So, yeah, in fugue, when you have the two voices, you have to use this. So you have the fugue subject and the answer. And then often, after those two voices are in, there's an extension before the third voice. Bach does this most of the time in well-tempered clavier. After the two voices, there's extra, a little coda. And they just play around like this. That's all it is. And then comes the first voice. So if we do like... So you hear, it just sounds exactly like the opening of a fugue. So there's where the two-part counterpoint comes in. Once you get to 3 and more, it's triadic. And the easiest way to do this is to put the fugue subject in the outer voices only. And in the Paris Conservatory, the first organ teacher who taught improvised fugue allowed this. He said, you can only do it in the outer voices. It's much easier on your head. Because it's either the bass or the melody. Later, they started requiring them in the inner voices. Okay? So this takes quite a bit of practice. One thing you can do, however, like with this, it's very easy to think in terms of chords, like let's say just rule of the octave. And to add that thematic material at any time to any voice. And see, it sounds contrapuntal. And all I'm doing is I'm going quick, you do the little thing, da 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 da. Okay, I'm kind of assigning it to different voices at the absolute last second. And in an easy fugue subject like that, it is possible. In a longer chromatic subject with difficult intervals, it's harder. But here it's possible to do that. Yes. Yes. Some themes are very easy and are obviously made just for that purpose. Like they were composed so that they will work in stretto, or that it will make a good bass line. You can see it once you start studying, you can see this is what the composer was trying to do. Especially with stretto, it's very clear sometimes that a subject was written on purpose to imitate at the fifth at such and such a location, because it fits perfectly and everything else is a complete train wreck. So sometimes it's built in. I have friends who improvise fugue and know exactly how to create a subject that's impossible. You know, like forged in the fires of Mount Doom. I have a friend in New York. I never let him give me subjects because they're terrible. They're so hard. But from history, most subjects are fairly friendly. So there's one, it was a very chromatic subject. I'm trying to remember if it was ascending or descending. It was something like that, or it was, maybe it was that, I don't remember. But after playing with it, I found out it was perfectly designed to imitate at the fifth in a stretto. Okay, if one note had been off, it wouldn't have worked. So certain subjects, like ones that fall evenly, see, it falls very evenly, so that will imitate. You can imitate it at the fourth, at the fifth, above or below. It's quite easy. It's when the durations and the intervals are very uneven that it gets a lot harder.
The chromaticism.
And the chromaticism. Depending on the chromaticism, how far it departs from the key. Just a chromatic scale, or, you know, this almost doesn't even modulate. I mean, it does, but that's almost considered in the same key because it's such a common chromatic motion. So that's easy in the bass. It's a lot harder in the soprano. It's just ugly. The idea of fugue is that you have the exposition where the subjects enter, and you have this thing called thematic density, where you hear the theme a lot. It's a lot. And then you need relief from that, where it's not as much, or maybe none, or maybe only a slight reference, and that's the episode. So the episode gives relief from the theme, and it modulates. And the easiest way is just to use a sequential bass motion. So very often, you'll get this kind of circle of fifths in Bach. Some composers use it for every episode and every fugue, okay? And it's not necessary at all. You can use all kinds of other motions. And I try to vary the bass motions that I use for episodes and not use the same one twice in the same piece, because it's just too easy to go back to circle of fifths. So get away from the theme, modulate to a new key area, prepare for the next presentation of the subject. That's the function of the episode. I think it's very involved. I think that, obviously we can't know exactly how he improvised, except there are organ manuscripts that, his students took down in shorthand when he was improvising. And then supposedly he went back later and helped them and said, oh, then I did this, and then I did this. And so some of these organ preludes might be a good representation. I think in the case of Weltheimer Clavier, and in fact much of what he wrote, he was always proving how far you could take things. I mean, this is the guy who wrote Art of Fugue. It's the most difficult thing there is. He wrote one chaconne, and it's the best one there is. Okay? So I think every time he got out his pen, he was going to kick everybody's butt. I think he was competitive, and I think he had something to prove. So the first fugue from Book 1 is a difficult stretto fugue. It's not a normal something Matheson or Kirchner or Caleri or Fenaroli would have written at all. It's PhD level. So no, I think it's very deliberate to set the standard at a high level. I don't think it represents improvisation. Well, of course, a work on paper has an unlimited amount of revision that can be done and thought outside of real time. So improvisation is never on an equal footing with composition. And I don't propose that anything I improvise is better or should replace the repertoire. I think everything I improvise is worse than something that's out there on paper. So why do it? First of all, you can't really be an improviser without repertoire, because where are you getting the idea of style? What is it that you're responding to? You have to know this style, whether it's Beethoven or Chopin or Bach or Scarlatti. So we need it, and we cannot live without it. I do occasionally meet students and they say, I don't want to learn any repertoire, I don't want to do any Hanon, scales and arpeggios, I just want to go straight to improvisation. I say, you can't, because you have to have chops, and you have to have an ear, and you have to be literate. So we must be friends with the tradition of repertoire. So why improvise at all if the repertoire is so great? It's because of the kind of musician I want to be. I love music. I know you all love music. I mean, here you are spending your lives at this school, not working at a job and not doing other things you could be doing. So you're very committed to music. If that is the case, and we love music that much, I want to be able to speak fluently and spontaneously in the language of music. I don't want to need a script for everything I say. I do want to use those scripts. I love those scripts. And they will be part of my life as long as I am alive. But I also want to have spontaneous conversations. I want to know music well enough that I can just create it. I also find this to be delightful as a way of performing and interacting with an audience, just as a different kind of art form, as opposed to hearing the Tempest Sonata for the 300th time. Sorry, I had to hear it again the other day. I just taught it, and it's a great piece. But I think there should be room for something that is not scripted on paper. So that's why. But I constantly am looking for themes, ideas, forms, figurations, keyboard styles with which to improvise. Okay? There's a book that explains that quite well called Fantasies of Improvisation by Dana Gooley. He's a musicologist at Brown University. A couple of things happened. One is it's just a huge cultural shift, actually, that can never be reduced to one thing. It's many, many things. But first of all, the idea of the work, the composed work, as a permanent thing that represents composers' intentions and must be played one way. That did not exist in the 18th century. They never played anything twice. They often didn't even play anything. They'd play it and then maybe recycle it into different instrumentation. But there was no such thing as a fixed work. And musicians didn't have repertoires. Imagine that. They walked around with no repertoire. What are they going to play? Whatever's on the music stand tonight, right? The concerto or the opera or whatever it is. They had no repertoire. So the idea of the fixed, permanent, great work of art that must be venerated kind of starts happening, especially with Beethoven. And deservedly so. I mean, it is great. Then in concerts start becoming more respectable and less of a kind of noisy, informal thing. And it just seems like all the performers kind of at the same time got a bad feeling about improvisation, and they just stopped. Even Liszt didn't want to do it. Schumann didn't want to see it happen. Henri Herz didn't want to do it anymore. It's very interesting, all at the same time. And then by the time you get recordings and conservatories, it's done. And by the way, the Paris Conservatory was founded right when the new, better pianos with iron frames came out, and they're faster and louder. And so what are all the pianists at the Paris Conservatory doing? Thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of exercises. Okay? Montgeroul, Louis Ferenc, Pierre-Joseph Zimmermann, Henri Herz, all these people, thousands of pages of this stuff. They're just doing this. And there's no time to improvise when you're working on your chops. The only improvisers were the organists in the corner of the building. So it's a very interesting, weird cultural shift. And now suddenly we're in this age where everyone goes, well, wait, why can't we? Well, we put it off for 150 years, so now we don't know how. and we excluded it from our curriculum. So now we don't know how. Yeah, it's a great question, and that book by Dana Gooley is, I think, the best source on that.